Hey, it's Mandee Montana. You know, love is in the air this Valentine's season, and there's no better way to celebrate than with the ultimate gift of relaxation from Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler. From February 1st through the 16th, when you purchase a couple's massage, you'll receive 2 free express facial gift cards valued at $120. That's a luxurious treat for you and your loved one. And the romance doesn't stop there. Visit the spa between Thursday, February 13th and Sunday, February 16th for a couples massage, and they'll make it even more special. You'll be treated to chocolate roses, champagne, and the expert touch of our fully certified massage therapists, creating an unforgettable experience. Spots are filling up fast, so don't wait. Call Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler today at 903-345-4622 to book your Valentine's experience today. That's 903-345-4622 to book your Valentine's Day couple massage at Hand & Stone. Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast, hosted by Mandee Montana, a podcast that celebrates women, their stories, their struggles, and ability to overcome. Conversations that celebrate their gifts, their talents, and courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast. Presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. With over 20 massage therapists and 6 estheticians certified and trained in multiple protocols, you can get an affordable massage or facial located right here in the East Texas area. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in the Cumberland Shopping Center in Tyler or online at handandstonetyler.com. Welcome back to the Celebrating Women podcast. I'm Mandee Montana, and today is a little bit different episode. We're still going to hear from an incredibly empowering and inspiring woman. Her name is Rhonda, but I actually did this interview on another podcast that I'm a part of, so I wanted to share that with you today. I have a second podcast. It's called The Unknown Morning Show, and on that podcast, I team up with my radio mentor, Chuck McKinley, and he and I reminisce about radio when we work together, and most of the time we interview our friends from the business, whether they're still in the business or they've moved on to other things. And this particular interview reminded me so much of the stories that we share here on Celebrating Women that I felt like it would be a treat for you guys to hear it. It's our interview with Rhonda Parsons. She was a radio personality on Sunny 106.5 KWOI, and she and I have crossed paths several times. We've become friends, and I am so excited for you to hear her story as a part of the Unknown Morning Show. Okay, here we go.
Test.
Roll music.
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic and other stuff too.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
Chuck, do you want to start?
I'm going to try to kind of get my into my headspace here a little bit.
Yeah. Rhonda, thank you for the notes. This was amazing.
Yeah,
Chuck,
you're welcome.
Chuck usually looks people up online and makes notes for me when he books them. And then when I book people, I don't always remember to do that for him.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to do this better. And I was like, whoa.
No, I looked at the
impressed.
questionnaire and I thought maybe I should just write it out and then they can go with whatever
For
they
sure.
Yeah.
find interesting.
You know, the interesting thing, Rhonda, you know, I see that you survived a big radio and also an earthquake.
Yeah.
That was what? Did you say it was a 6.8?
Yeah, 6.8. It was in 1971. I was 6 years old. And
Wow.
in that, you know, as a child, I heard the rumbling. And in my mind, I was picturing this big flatbed truck with one of those big drums on it with a chain on it. And somebody was rotating that and pulling our house onto the truck because you could feel the movement. You could hear the rumbling. And in my 6-year-old mind, that's what I thought it was.
Wow.
And then I went and told my mom, Mommy, somebody's moving the house. And she was like, it's an earthquake.
Wow.
But it was a major one. It was one of the more major ones because like freeways dropped off.
Oh, wow.
Oh, boy.
One of the hospitals that was a mile north of us, a third of it collapsed.
Oh, my goodness.
What are they?
And where you were in California at the time?
Yes.
Yeah. This wasn't the World Series one, was it?
No, this was the one in 1994 was actually the epicenter was a mile from our old home.
Oh, wow.
So it would have been major, major, but gas lines broke. That's what I was trying to think of, because it burned down one of the drugstores a mile from us. Their gas line broke and it burned that down. We were one of 3 neighbors in that neighborhood that had an in-ground pool. And I remember people coming and getting the water out of our pool. And our water and electricity were probably off for at least 2 weeks, I think.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
And we had the aftershocks. Interesting thing on the house, we were in a very middle-class neighborhood, but the former owner of the house was actually the offensive or defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh, cool.
Jack Ferguson.
Cool.
Wow.
So I
That's
pictured all the
awesome.
Ram players, around the pool. But it was a modest home, but it was nice. In fact, and it was kind of growing up in California. Of course, you think about celebrities, and I know my sister went to Granada Hills High School. John Elway was in her class. Valerie Bertinelli was in her class.
Well.
And then probably a block or 2 from us, John Amos lived with his family.
Oh, wow.
Neat.
So
Cool.
So it was a neat place to grow up.
Yeah.
But with everything going on now, I wouldn't want to go back.
Right.
And fires
it's
were plenteous. I
devastating.
mean, I remember we'd get a fire. We had like a culvert behind our house. It looked like a little canyon. And whenever there would be a fire, it would be in the distance, but my dad would get up on the roof and hose down the roof just in case with the Santa Ana winds, if there were any embers that came and burned down the house,
The pictures from this past couple of weeks have just been just so terrible. Yeah. And, because they were saying it was like almost tornado type winds going through there. Did you have anything like that? Santa Ana winds in
the
general?
Santa Ana winds, they were strong, but not like they are now. I mean, I was reading they were up to 100 miles an hour, and I'm like, I don't remember them being that strong, but they were pretty, I would say probably 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, so like a mild hurricane back in the day, and now it's like Cat 5 hurricane winds.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's wow.
But the thing I remember about a fire, one time we were on the Ventura Freeway, and there was fire on both sides.
Really?
And of course it was rush hour, so everybody was stalled, but that was all you could see was firefighters, flames, the smoke, Wow. That was the only time I was what I felt was in the middle of a fire,
At what age did you move to East Texas?
13.
13.
In 1978.
Wow. What was that like? Culture shock? I mean, totally different.
Because Tyler wasn't as big as it is now. Tyler was like a third of the size it is. So we came from the San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles to Tyler. I have a brother in Dallas, and my dad wanted the family to be together. So that's how we wound up here. But it was different.
Everything kind of stopped at the loop almost. I mean, I moved here in 84 and the mall was just starting to go up. But you're right. It seemed like, the last 40 years it's just gone through the roof.
Yes.
Rhonda Parsons with us on the Unknown Morning Show. Longtime air personality, call letters KTYL, KOOI especially. I'm sure you've heard her on that station back in the day when they were easy listening juggernaut in East Texas. So you and the folks and your family, you moved to Texas. When did you get your interest in radio?
I was actually 15, and Brian Houston was the one who gave me my start. Okay, so I was a sophomore in high school, and a friend of mine, actually my best friend in high school, we were serving the soft drinks at the junior-senior prom. He was the disc jockey.
Okay.
Or, the radio personality that was doing the music.
Oh.
And he came to get a drink, and I knew who he was. And I said something about, being interested in radio. And he said, give me a call. He said, we'll see what we can do. So I was too young to go on the radio. At that point, you have to be 16 to have your license. So he let me be an intern at KTBB, which then was in the Bryant Petroleum Building, which is now the Austin Bank Building downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I did that until I was 16, got my license, and they said, okay, you can work midnight to 6. And my dad was like, you are not working midnight to 6. And I understand he was worried about me being
Safety.
able to juggle that with school. So when I went to college, I went to TJC and I took a broadcasting course, and Lawrence Birdsong, he's since passed, but anyway, he was the instructor, and they had internships at KTYL. So I became part of the internship, and then they had a shift open up. Actually, it was on a Sunday. It was 12 hours, no talking. It was running record shows.
Yeah.
Casey Kasem's American Top 40, Dick Clark's Rock, Roll, and Remember, and then later Rick Dees.
Now, were you working for, was Dave there? Was Dave?
Dave Moreland. Who
Our pal.
hired me. Yes, our friend, longtime friend. Let's see. So I went to work with him at KOOI in 2000, or KOOI as we called it. Anyway, I met him in December of 1987 at KTYL. I actually went from running the record shows to working an air shift, primarily midnight to 6 on Sunday mornings.
Did he have the whiteboard up as far as, he would write notes to the staff and everything and the control?
I don't remember that.
The reason why I say I did part-time for him. I was coming off the road in 90 doing a sales job, trying to get back in the radio. Eventually ended up with KNUE in early 91, but I was about 3 months with Dave, and I had a Saturday shift with something like midnight to 7, and Sunday night was like 11 to 6 in the morning. The absolute worst hours you can imagine, but I was so happy to be back in radio. I loved it. And I don't think I think I maybe started Rick Dees like on Sundays or something like that, but I was so happy to be there. And I remember Dave had this big whiteboard that he had promo stuff and stationality stuff. And I said, well, you don't mind if I just transcribe this and use it as prep? Because I think even then my eyesight was a little wonky. And he was, oh, no, that's okay. But I always thought it was kind of an interesting touch. And I've always liked working for Dave. He's just a terrific individual. Mm-hmm. Really, really, really terrific. So you were doing, so you ended up going from weekends and I'm sorry, did you say overnights or nights?
Yeah, I started off doing the record shows at K2YL, and then I wound up doing an overnight air shift on Sunday mornings, and then I wound up filling in whenever they needed me, which was really neat. I mean, there were sometimes I was doing the evenings, or I think I even did drive times. And anyway, so yeah, that was where I really got my, I guess you would say, established.
Yeah, I got your feet wet.
Yeah.
Well, and you know as well as I do that, your swing, your part-time, whatever at that point, but if you do your job and do your job right, that makes you so, so valuable to the organization because they can plug you in and not worry about it, right?
Exactly. And at the time, Brian Maloney was the program director.
Oh, okay.
And we had an A-plus staff. I mean, we had Bill Davis, we had Janie Wheat, or Janie Baker, who has since passed on, but I always thought she had the best female voice.
Yeah, she was terrific.
Rick Evans, Rick Higginbotham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I came to town in '84 and I heard KTYL, I went, whoa, everything fit. The music, the stationality, the personalities, the jingles, everything was like pow, pow. I'm going, this is a big market station in a small market. And I was very, very, very impressed.
And I need to mention Gary Stevens, Gary Safley. He actually passed on, but he was an excellent program director.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know him, but
No.
I never met him.
But he was early K2YL. This is like back in the 80s.
So, and were you all doing top 40 rock at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Gosh, that had to be fun.
It was. Yeah. And then, of course, the AM station at that time was oldies. And every now and then Jeff Baker was the one who was in charge of that. I'd have to fill in on that. So I got a real good mix of not only the current music, but also, music from the 50s to the, early, I guess, late 60s, early 70s.
Was it oldies rock or maybe
oldies rock?
The reason why I ask is there was a while, if you remember, the old K-Doc was kind of like a Dean Martin type station, big band type stuff, which I kind of have a soft spot in my heart because my dad brought me up on things like that.
Oh, wow.
On the old 78 discs and stuff. You know, the kind if you looked at them wrong, they'd break.
Yeah.
No, I still remember going through my dad's collection and dropping one and just going, "Oh, Dad." I'm thinking, you know, and, you know, I just gently put it back in there and folded the book and was like, okay, maybe you'll never find out. I never said anything, so.
Hey guys, it's Mandy. Have you been struggling to lose those extra pounds? Oh, I know. I have totally been there. An extra, 15 to 20 pounds can totally creep up on you in perimenopause. Or at least it has with me. And I think I found it early. I hope it's not happening to you. But if it is, I've got the solution. You can lose up to 15 pounds in 8 days with an incredible product line that I found and I want to share with you. Get a custom product recommendation with a complimentary wellness screening in the show notes. Just click Zing with Mandy. Rhonda, I'm curious about promotions during that time. So during the 80s, when you're on the air, by the time I got into radio, some of the stunting and the promotions and stuff had started to kind of die down a little bit, but y'all probably did some really fun things.
They had the Stroh's Boat Patrol, which they'd choose a different lake every weekend, and they'd
like
take
Stroh's beer.
Stroh's was sponsoring them.
Neat.
And they'd have that, and you know, they'd go out and meet people, and of course, businesses that opened would always want a remote broadcast, to draw people in, and so they had a lot of that. I mean, they were very active in the community and with promotions. Yeah. And that's another thing that's kind of almost sad about radio is they don't, the current air staff or the current, what would you say, environment for radio doesn't allow for that anymore.
You don't hear anything local.
No.
I mean, not even public service stuff anymore.
Did those rules change? Officially? The reason I'm asking is because I just feel like I don't ever hear it anymore. I mean, I'll hear an announcement about an event that's going on or something kind of in passing maybe, but it's not like a real invitation and something that they're like a part of. You know, like what we used to do at the ranch when we would do things and we'd kind of create our own promotions. And I'm sure Dave did that at KWI back in the day too. I just didn't work for him at that time. But it was something that we were a part of, like you're talking about, where we would actually be in the community with our listeners.
Between the syndication, and now things are so pre-recorded. I think that took a lot of that away because you can't really invite anybody
if you're not there.
I mean, you can go ahead and record it, but if there's any malfunction and that doesn't play at the right time, nobody's going to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and I'll just throw this out here for both of you. Do you think that when it comes to like the people in New York, the people that are making decisions, they probably go, well, you know what? In Tyler, Texas, we're just giving them what they want, which is either, it's top 40 country, whatever. And, somebody will cut a voice track that says, this is George Strader. This is Britney Spears, and the heck with them. I'm just wondering how that works, Mandy, you were kind of close to that when you were over at
Town Square
a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you were at a time, there was one time for about maybe 2 years, you were doing 6 stations a day.
Yeah, 4 consistently, and then sometimes the 5th and the 6th. The stations in Wyoming, I was kind of doing a swing shift like you're talking about, Rhonda. If they had somebody out or if they needed somebody, I was doing one of the shows consistently on the weekends for them, and then if they needed me to fill in, I would do it. I think that was a little bit of the mindset. And I think the other mindset is just they weren't radio people. So the people that were making the decisions at a really high level were bankers. So they don't understand the community aspect of it necessarily. And two, like, this is me giving them the benefit of the doubt, but when you're in a larger city, you don't have I don't think you have the intimacy with a station the way you would here in East Texas.
Exactly.
I mean, you might identify with or feel like the personality, almost like you do now with a celebrity on Instagram or something, because you're seeing their own words and their lifestyle.
Sure.
But I think it's different when you live in a small town and you run into them at the grocery store. That's not as likely in New York or LA or San Francisco, wherever, right? And so I think that it's probably hard for them to have an understanding of why it's important for to have local personalities engaging in the community. And it doesn't help their bottom line, because Chuck and I were talking about this off mic before you got here, Rhonda. The expense of having personnel is high. And if you've never run a business or been a business manager, you know, you don't just have someone's salary to think of. You've got insurance, you've got taxes, all these other extraneous things that go into investing in people, which I think is a very valuable investment. I'm arguing for that, but it's just, it multiplies. And when you're starting to cut on the bottom line, I think that's why the bankers cut it, is because they don't see the value that we know from doing it and being in community with people. That's a long answer. Sorry.
No. And you know, the big story, kind of, those of us in broadcasting, we talked about it before we hit the go button, was Allen Media Group cut 100 people across 33 TV stations yesterday.
Yeah.
And all of their meteorologists are gone. The Weather Channel is going to be, I mean, can you imagine the Weather Channel will have to micromanage so they can take care of weather in Mason City, Iowa, or Topeka? And I think of that and I go, well, what could go wrong except maybe missing a tornado warning or something?
Yeah.
All kinds of things could go wrong.
Sure. Yeah. Because hey, locally, we've all had it, you know, and I think you'd all agree that as radio people, we can all, you know, play music and stuff, but we kind of put on our public service hat when it comes to severe weather. I mean, and because there were times in my career, now at KTBB, we have it to where we, when we do have severe weather, we just go to our TV partner and they take care of it. They do a fabulous job, and that's a terrific thing to do. But there have been times, most of the times in my career, you know, the weather wire's blinking. You rip, you read, you play another song, you do updates. My first radio gig had one of those Heathkit monitors that would give you the barometer and everything. Oh, wow. So you could sit there and we would have to write down the temperatures and the barometric pressure each hour. I know, pain in the butt, but the cool thing would be in bad weather situations, you could refer to that and say, well, the barometer's dropped so many points in this past hour. We've dropped this many degrees. And
how many people know what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I'm picking on you, Chuck. I'm sure it was a fun education to learn that, though, and understand it.
Yeah, and it was terrifying, too, because my first gig, I still have a tape, Rhonda, of myself and our news director, Dan Conrad, doing play-by-play of a tornado.
Oh, wow.
And it landed about 2 miles from the station. And, yeah, it was I haven't listened to it in about 40 years or so, but it was quite an experience, and it was a couple of 20-year-olds doing it, and when we were doing it, we were saying, okay, we may have to leave the air for just a second. We're going to go to our B studio, which is located in the basement. So you may not hear us for a second, but we have to go there. And you hear a voice in the back say, it's flooded. You guys can't go there. And we said, well, okay, we will be staying here. But it was quite an education. And to me, that's even now with weather, I still kind of have this thing in my head where I kind of go on alert status. Mm-hmm. That was the thing about being out of radio for a couple of years. Man, that was gone. It was like having a vacation. Oh, it's going to rain. And Rosanna would ask me, do you know what's, I go, I don't know. I don't pay attention to the weather. I don't. Even when I'm on vacation, we're going to get, I don't know. I'm on vacation. The switch is turned off.
Yeah, and that's nice. Rhonda, you met Dave in 1986, but you didn't go to work for him until 2000.
Right.
How did that come about?
He was at KTYL. Uh-huh. He came in working part-time, and then I actually got out of radio for a little bit, and in 2000, I got back in. He was at KWI, and so I called him, and I started working at KWI part-time, and then I went full-time. That was in April, and then I went full-time in October.
Oh, wow.
And the
6
rest
months.
is history.
That's quick.
Because
yeah.
it's like, I was there until, through the sale, when they sold off some of the stations, and then we went on to the Breeze, and I didn't leave until 2008.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when I remember hearing you on the air.
Yeah.
That's when I was listening to you. Not too much, because I kind of flipped around, and you were on middays probably when I was in school or at work. But I just remember you being such a fixture there.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
good.
I enjoyed it. You know,
Yeah.
it was a great place to be. I mean, I've had some really incredible opportunities, worked with some great people and people who were very established in the business. Dudley Waller had Waller Broadcasting, you know, Paul Gleiser at
Yeah.
KVNE.
Yeah.
You know, just Brian Houston has been in broadcasting, you know, for so many years as well, you know, and Dave Moreland, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, just people who are really established, know a lot of the business, and they're not only great people personally, but also professionally. They know how to run operations,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's something that's really sad about radio from when it probably started out all the way to now. It's lost some of that personal touch, you know, with all the automation, with all the voice tracking, things like that. You know, that's one of the things I think about when I think about the evolution of radio. You know, you look at, I mean, when it first started out, people, that was their whole world before TV.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't around for that.
Well, none of us were.
Clear, but you know, but I think about that. But you know, I think the most major thing I was on the air for was 9/11.
Oh.
And I remember the morning of it, my brother actually called my mom and said, you know, something's going on. They've attacked, you know, in New York, and one of the towers had already fallen. And I remember turning on the TV and watching it. And then I had to drive down to Jacksonville to be on the air at 10. And so I was listening to the rest of it. It was already being broadcast on KWOI. And I remember Peter Jennings, you know, it was being broadcast live on ABC. And so I was listening to him. And I was in the car driving to work when the second tower fell. And just when he, you know, talked about it and the emotion in his voice, I mean, you could just feel that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
it was powerful.
I think that's a lost element of radio.
I agree.
You know?
Even carrying a nationally syndicated broadcast in a moment like that, but having a person who's a respected journalist, also having a personal moment, experiencing it. I know what you're talking about. I was listening that day too. That's my birthday.
Oh, okay.
That was my 18th birthday. And that was my senior year.
Wow.
At school, we didn't have Channel 1 that day. So all we had was radio. And so that experience that you were describing about it being all of your world back in, you know, the 20s and 30s and 40s before TV, that was what I experienced that morning was our government class. That was my first class as things were happening. We were listening to the radio. We were all sitting around a boombox, hearing it happen together. And it was so surreal. It was so strange. And it wasn't until maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon that they got the TVs working. But until then, we were all listening to the radio and hearing it like you were. And it was just, I actually recorded it. I had a blank cassette in my boombox at the time. And it was my boombox that we were listening to. So I hit record and I went back and listened to it, I don't know, maybe 15 years later. And it was the most haunting experience. I don't know that I ever want to again. I have it somewhere, but it's not something I want to revisit often.
I understand.
What was it like for you on air that day? Did you continue to carry the news feed or did you have to do your show?
We did. We actually carried it for about a week at least. And it was very heart-wrenching. I mean, to listen to, it was so graphic as far as like everything that they were facing as far as the loss and trying to find people. And I remember most days I was in tears because it was just, it was just that emotionally, it was just something that you don't get over.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think watching it on TV and hearing it during the day, going home in the evenings and watching it on TV, then it would just kind of play in your head. And you could really feel and see, as I was listening during the day, I could, you know, it was almost like I could picture, you know, what was happening. And,
yeah. How did you come out of that? Dave was program director at the time. Was there a sense of patriotism on the air or music changes that you guys made coming out of that event as you moved forward? Was there maybe some changes to the tone of the station?
I think we were more sensitive to people if they called in, and wanted to talk about it. But as far as changing the music, I don't remember changing the music.
Dave's so good.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I loved about working with him and listening when he programmed.
Yeah, he was very sensitive to the listeners.
Yeah.
And still to this day has a lot of, friendships that he's, kept up with. People he's kept up with that used to call him when he was on the air.
Yeah.
Working with Dave and being around Dave is like, master class in broadcasting.
Yeah.
And I told him it was like, working for the Godfather. I just sit and absorb, because the biggest lesson I think I took from Dave is you can be a boss of a station. You can take care of your folks, and you can take care of business, and you can do it in a humane way, meaning not be a jerk. And Dave was just wonderful. Wonderful.
He was always that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you ever had any negative experiences as a female in broadcasting. I've had very, very, very few. But I got to say, working for guys like Chuck and Dave, and when I worked with Lucky Larry, I truly felt like I had family. I had somebody that was looking after me, that wanted me to excel, that was willing to mentor me and teach me and let me grow. That's not always the experience as a female that we get, whether it's in radio or somewhere else. But I felt really blessed to get to work with these guys.
Yeah.
What I would never get about that is, if you do well, obviously the station does well, say, or any of us, if we're in a work atmosphere. So I've never got that sort of anti-female or just anti-person sentiment at all.
Well, you're a good person, Chuck.
Well, sometimes. No, it's like, make the workplace positive. It's like, KTBB.
Some people just have darkness in them that they don't, and it's their own world, it's their own anger and frustration.
Sometimes it's out of insecurity.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't want to see someone excel to a point greater than themselves. And you have to kind of have that mentoring, and that's Dave, that's Brian, that's
absolutely
the people I've worked with, and that's a blessing.
It's
to
a
have
huge
somebody
blessing.
like that.
Brian, I worked with Brian. We did sports talk for a couple of years, and I was so fortunate because Reed Kerr, I worked with him for a year doing sports talk, and then Brian came in, and I had just such great mentors because I didn't know what I was doing. Because when Dave hired me to be the producer for the shows, I said, well, what do we do? And he goes, I don't know, because it was Dave's first news gig too. And so it was a real learning situation. But to this day, I always say that 99.3 Talk FM was by far the station I had the funnest time. I had the best time. It felt like we were doing big time radio every day, except, I would sit in Dave's office occasionally. I go after ratings, and I would say, we're getting beat by Mineola and KMU. Dave, how does this happen? What are we doing wrong? Oh, Dave,
You guys weren't doing anything wrong. I think it's just, and we've touched on this before on podcasts, but if people don't know you're there, they don't know how to. They can't listen to you if they don't know you're there. And sometimes there's a marketing budget and sometimes there's not.
And we didn't have a consistent ID.
Yeah.
We weren't like totally sports. We were a little bit of everything. And I totally get that too. But still.
Well, Rhonda, I'm looking at, you made a wonderful outline for us. We know you, but I didn't know all of these interesting facts about you. And you've really overcome some really difficult things in your life.
Yeah. I would say cancer. I had cancer back in 2011.
Yeah.
Actually, the first time I had cancer, I was at KWI.
Really?
Yes, 2001. And I had been working 2 jobs up until that point. I was doing KWI on the weekends, and I was doing a full-time job during the week. And so I was tired a lot, and I thought, well, it's just because I'm working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
But in 2001, I was told that I had some growths in my reproductive system. Basically, I had ovarian cancer. And that had spread to my colon, but the colon cancer didn't really ramp up until 5 years later. So I went through my first round of cancer, but at that point I was in between insurance coverages. And the nice thing is the doctor kind of, what would you say? He didn't really report it as cancer, so I could get insurance coverage.
Yeah.
Wow. But that's when I had my first, what would you say, cancer diagnosis probably. And I didn't have, the fortunate thing was it was all contained, so they just removed some things. And, but it had already spread to my colon.
You didn't know
and
it,
so
though.
5 years, right. 5 years later was when I started having the symptoms of colon cancer. And then 10 years later was when I was in stage 2. My doctor here missed it, which, you know, there are times I say, I wish that hadn't happened, but I see where God worked through it. And anyway, so the first time I did not go through chemo and radiation. The second time I did.
Okay.
And so that was the treatment is actually probably worse than the illness.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
And so I have a continual, what would you say? The after effects for me have been blood clotting. In fact, 2 years ago, they finally gave me a name for it. It's chronic ischemic microvascular disease.
Wow.
So every now and then I get blood clots, you know, and they can be pretty serious. So I would say I've almost died 12 times in 13 years between the cancer
Rhonda.
and the blood
Oh,
clots.
dear.
Yeah, you know, but it's like God has a reason for me being here because I feel like the fish that keeps getting thrown back in the pond. It's like, not yet. And that's okay, you know, and I've been able to encourage people. But yeah, it's, I didn't anticipate that because my idea was you get through cancer and you go on with life and you get well after a while. But it really just ruined my arteries, my coronary artery, and my vessels. And that's the situation that I have.
But you've got such a positive mindset.
Yeah, thank you. I
you're
thank the Lord
welcome.
for that because He brought me through it. I mean, it was prayer because I was dying.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a powerful. It really changes your outlook on life.
Yeah.
Because I remember I actually lost. I'm previously widowed. I'm remarried, but I lost my first husband, and I remember I got to the point where the radiation had spread the cancer to the point where I went in to see my surgeon. I said, okay, you said you were going to operate in October. This was in 2011. And my employer said in September, he said, you know, go get well. Your job will be here when you get back. But in that time, I was dying.
Yeah.
I was down to 105 pounds. And I remember one day I just looked in the mirror.
And you're not a little person. You're tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just looked in the mirror and I said, and I looked myself in the eye and I said, I'm dying. And I thought of my husband. I thought of what he would go through. My mom, she was actually diagnosed with cancer in October of 2011. She had lymphoma that had spread to her stomach.
Wow.
And so I thought of my mom. I thought, I won't be here for her. She actually passed in June of 2012. And I just thought of, I didn't think of myself. I thought of everybody else, and I thought, I've got to be here. So I actually just started, I was so sick I could hardly eat, but I just started eating everything I could think of that had calories. And so I gained 7 pounds in a week, and I made an appointment with my surgeon, and I said, you know, whatever happens, you are not responsible. I will sign the paperwork that says there is no liability. You have to operate. We have to try.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Wow, Rhonda.
Wow.
But it's actually the treatment. And I had never been close enough to somebody who had gone through cancer treatment to know what to expect.
Yeah, it just ravages your body.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But I mean, the good news is I'm able to do so much. I mean, that's the surprise. And I see that as God's working in my life. And I'm grateful for that, because otherwise things could have been very different,
Well, you got through it. And I know you have an entrepreneurial mindset and that you want to help and encourage people. Tell me about your concept of inside the box, unwrap your potential.
Yeah, I know this sounds funny, but one of the things that I was really good at in high school, and I thought I'd actually be, like a, what would you call it, an account representative for an advertising firm, because I've always had this idea of, taking a concept, building a campaign, and, or developing a business.
Yeah.
The thing that I came up with in high school, we had to come up with an idea and, advertise it and everything. I came up with a vitamin and I called it VitaVigor.
Okay.
And, anyway, so I'll never forget for the what would you say, the jingle? I used the Hallelujah chorus.
That works.
Yeah.
But, that's where that came in. And one day I was thinking about that and I thought, I would love to have be a life coach.
Yeah.
And I thought of, okay, so what kind of business would I have? And and that's when I came up with Inside the Box, Unwrap Your Potential,
Yeah. I think you would be brilliant at it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of things going on right now, though. So I don't know when you would find the time. But even if you could carve out 30 minutes a day, I would love to see you do this.
No, but and I've been able to encourage people with my story because,
sure.
it's what God brought me through. There were, like I said, I've almost died 12 times in 13 years. And plus, during the treatment, all the things I went through. I was hospitalized constantly. I had constant blood clotting, a lot of complications that other patients that they had treated didn't have. But my body just, the way I see it, I wasn't designed to go through cancer, but is anybody,
Yeah.
It's just with the way my body was, my body's always been so sensitive. It's kind of like, I'm really amazed that I made it through.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so thankful that you did. And we
thank
reconnected recently because you told me about a kitty cat.
Yeah, exactly. Where I work, we actually, last summer we had 24 cats. We're now down to, I actually, Whiskey Kitty's mom is pregnant again. We just got her picked up yesterday. So she's going to be fostered and probably adopted. And then her kittens will have a home or have homes. And then there was another female that we still have. They picked her up as well, O'Malley Cat Rescue. So, it's a happy ending to a tragic situation because we've seen a lot of cats disappear. We've seen a lot of cats die. But anyway, it's just sad.
I was
glad. Never a cat person really until I worked for Tyler Advertising and Branding Solutions, and I worked there first in 2015 and 2016 in outside sales, and cats were there then, and that's where I got my rescue. But I was never a cat person until then. But I watched them interact with each other and interact with us. And anyway, so that's how I became interested in cats. But otherwise, I was a dog person.
Well, now I've gotten cats from both of you.
Yeah.
In 2006, I went out to Chuck's place. He had a similar situation. He had cats that were multiplying on your property.
Oh, yeah.
You had what, probably 25 or 30 at one time?
We had 27. I would feed them. My wife got so angry at me, but I couldn't not feed them.
Yeah, you can't just let them starve.
No.
But I think when you picked up your two, maybe I only had 5 or 6. There wasn't the 20, I don't think.
Oh, there were a solid 12 to 15.
Really? Okay.
But they were scattered. They were running. They weren't really approachable. Some of them were pretty feral.
Yeah.
And the 2 that I ended up with were super approachable and sweet. And I had one of them for 10 years. And the other one lived to be almost 18.
Wow.
And then I adopted a couple of other kitties with my husband from a friend on Facebook. And then when Rhonda messaged me, I don't know, it was the strangest thing. People message me. I see things all the time on Facebook about animals, but you sent me a direct message and it was the sweetest. Do you know anyone who can help? And I don't know why, but I felt so compelled that I was just supposed to go get that cat. And then I did, and there were all kinds of crazy hijinks. We thought that the cage was secure. It wasn't. She got out. I think I stayed for about 45 minutes.
You did.
We finally lured her in with some food, but she was so sweet with the other cats. She seemed so good-natured, Rhonda, and she's that way with us now. And then with our 2 older cats, she just immediately fit right in. She snuggles up with our cat Alice constantly. Like they nap together and play together. And yeah, it's been and I think it was good for my husband and me too. I think we were ready to have a little baby in the house again.
Yeah. I didn't realize how relational cats are.
They are.
I always grew up thinking that cats were like Garfield. As long as you're there to serve them.
Pure
that's all they
attitude,
care
right?
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not the way they are because the female rescue that we have, we brought her in December of 2017. She watches for me to come home. She wants me to sit while she eats, and keep her company. And she's just very relational.
Yeah.
It's almost like having a little dog. She follows me around, wants to be where I am, wonders what I'm doing, So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the dogs and cats, I think, and I've felt this for a long time with rescue animals, I think they feel And they know that you love them, you're taking care of them, you're their lifeline. I mean, it's like our dog. I don't even think that when we got Princey that I was thinking about, well, let's get a dog. Rosanna saw him online on Facebook, contacted people. They were in Fairfield and said, well, he was, what happened was is somebody had him and basically left their house, locked the door, and locked the yard. He was in the backyard by himself. Oh. So this kind lady came over for 6 months, would feed and water him every day. So Rosie gets the note about him, and then when she contacts, she goes, well, he's been adopted. Then about a week later, the person calls back and says, he hasn't been adopted. Can you get him now? So she got him. And but yeah, and that's you know, all of our animals that are rescues have past lives, and his is that he has extreme, he does not like to be alone at all. Yeah, so when I come home at night, it is insane. There's like 20 minutes where he's hopping around and glad to see me, where when I go to work, I'll tell him, I'll go, well, I have to go to work, and will you please take care of Mommy for me? And he just sits there and stares. It's like today, as he knows today, he thinks it's a work day because I'm coming to do this. I go, I have to go work. I'm going to go see my friend, take care of Mommy. Can I have a hug? And he just stares. Just stares at me.
Yeah.
But I get it too, because, you know, if you were in a yard and you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, it would have an impact on you. And your cat, you know, they're glad you're home. Your cats are glad you're home.
Oh, yeah. There's Alice usually greets me at the door like a dog.
Yeah.
And then Whiskey now has started doing it because she's like Alice's little shadow. And yeah, she is. She's started doing that. Stella, a little bit more like Garfield.
Yeah.
She kind of does her own thing. Not so much with attitude. She'll let you kind of love on her and be affectionate, but it needs to kind of be on her terms. Yeah, so they're funny. They do have such distinct personalities.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. But you've done some other really cool things, Rhonda. I had no idea that you're also musical. You write songs?
It's, it's kind of like one of those things, looking at the next chapter of my life, what am I going to do? But yeah, I guess in high school, I used to write poetry. And of course, with the entrepreneurial mindset and the advertising ideas and things like that, you come up with these slogans or these campaigns, you know. And but yeah, it's something I'd like to get into. I've written one song. I haven't given it to anybody or published it or anything, but it's one of those things where I thought I'd like to do that. I'd like to. I can't play a musical instrument. I can sing, but I can't. I don't have the coordination to play a musical instrument. Of course, I'm thinking, you know, here I ran a board, you know, in broadcasting, but it's a little bit different than playing a keyboard or,
totally
doing
get
a guitar.
I love being a music director at a radio station. I've done it a number of times. Can't sing. I mean, I can't play an instrument. I failed, what do they call it? Flutophone, the recorder as a kid. Awful at that stuff. But no, I love the feeling of being able to take songs and go, this goes to here, this goes to here. And we create an hour of music and it all flows together. And I love that. You should, you know, and you can self-publish these days, where like 20 years ago it wasn't a deal, but now you can put up your web page, put up your work that you've got. Who knows? Yeah. You know, maybe somebody will go, wow, this is something. Let's try this out. Or we want to publish it. They want to use it.
So that's kind of my next phase.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have anybody you collaborate with?
I go to Bethel Bible, and Todd Wright is the music director. I haven't talked to him about this yet, but anyway, I figure, you know, this is probably the year I'm going to try and do something with that.
That's amazing, Rhonda.
So would you give it to Todd to get feedback, or how would that work?
Probably, or see if he wants to do some writing together, because he's real musical.
Okay.
You know, so. So
that's exciting.
That's just kind of that's one of those things I want to do. I've taken some first steps, but I haven't, you know, really taken the plunge or solidified it yet.
There's so many talented people here in East Texas, and with connections, you know, to various other people. So, I mean, I think start networking in that and see what can happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And back in the 80s, my mom and I went to Community Christian Fellowship. That was when Paul Baloche was a music director. Ed Carr of Harvest went there, Dallas Home, Kelly Willard, you know, and if you know contemporary Christian music back in the 80s, they were main players. You know, they were very prominent. You know, and now of course Paul Balash is he's worldwide as a worship leader.
Yeah.
You know.
So you got that seed planted really early on.
And then my mom actually was an aspiring jazz singer.
I didn't know that.
Before she met my dad. And she was actually the executive secretary to Otto Perry of Decca Records before it became Capitol.
Cool.
You know, so she got to meet actually Frank Sinatra and I think Harry Belafonte and, you know, all these big names. And, you know, so I guess that's where I get my musical side. My practical side I get and the entrepreneurial side I get from my dad.
Yeah.
Because he was an accountant and he had, he was very business minded. Yep. So you've got this left brain, right brain thing going on.
Falls into place.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on with radio? Any memories that we didn't touch on, or anything that you just want to share about your experience in radio or broadcast? I know you did some acting too.
Yeah. Let's see. Was that in high school? I'm thinking.
No, you said in 2009.
Oh yeah.
You were cast as an extra.
Yeah, I was okay. So I had when I remarried. My husband's with PetSmart. He was promoted to store director. We went to Texarkana first and then Shreveport. And I didn't actually get to do it because I had just started a job and I was afraid that if I said, hey, I need a day or two off for filming, I was afraid he might say, you know what, why don't you go do that?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really neat. I had registered actually for broadcasting. I had registered with Glorioso Studios in Shreveport. And they actually called me and said, hey, we've got this CBS miniseries coming up. It's called The Gates. It's going to be a 13-week miniseries. They need extras. Are you interested? And I was like, at the time, it was before I got my job. And I said, sure, I'm in between employment right now. And then I just landed a job right before they filmed. And I didn't ask off. But I often wondered how that would have, you know, if that would have opened some doors. Because Shreveport at the time, they did a lot of filming over there.
They did.
I mean, that was, you know, Tom Cruise would come over there, Nicolas Cage. You know, they had some big names.
Yeah, I think Louisiana had an initiative at that time, a state initiative for bringing in the arts.
A lot of people came to Baton Rouge.
Was that shortly after the hurricanes rolled through there, maybe, and they were trying to bring in money? I think that's what, But it was good. There were, lots of things were filmed.
And then you had Millennium Studios was big there. They also were big in Los Angeles. And so, there was a big... Yeah, I was trying to remember my notes.
Well, Chuck, what have I missed?
I don't really know. I mean, you know, we hit the high points and things in between. You know, it's like we were talking, and I think we mentioned it on mic though, that, you know, you had some terrific call letters tied to your career, KTYL, KOOI, and KOOI to me, and it still comes up in conversations when any of us talk programming, that it's always kind of the main example of, you know, leave the station alone, let them do what they do, and they did, and you know, the corporate people killed it. It was just, and it was terrible to see. Even though at the time, those of us around us said, well, maybe this would be a positive step. You know, they're going to do this, and it didn't. And the stations never recovered because they did this. It was a kind of, I think they were going after mix at the time as kind of
I think they wanted to be more hot AC instead of traditional AC. And at the time, Mix 93.1 was a hot AC station. They were like 80s, 90s, and today, I think.
Yeah.
I was sort of on the sidelines for that because I was working with you on the ranch. Yeah. But McVeigh Media had come in to consult.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike McVeigh was very nice, very professional, that owned the company. The gentleman that he sent, I can't remember his name, and I probably shouldn't share it anyway, that came in to consult directly on KOOI. This was when you and Dave were still at the Breeze. He was pretty slick. And I don't mean that in the positive sense. He really didn't understand East Texas community. And so the changes that he was trying to make, which probably would have worked in a major market on an AC station, we weren't ready for here. And he just kind of pushed it on through. And then the air talent had to adjust. And two, they had to deal with, you know, listeners that were missing you guys and wondering where you were. It was a really interesting thing to watch from being on the sister station when that happened, because people wanted to know where Dave and Rhonda were,
Sure.
you know? And I mean that totally with respect to what your decision to stick with Waller and all of that. But it was interesting just to kind of witness it. I was pretty new to full-time radio at the time, so I'd never witnessed anything like it before. And it was just, I was sad for the listeners. I was sad you guys weren't with us. I was sad for the air talent that I liked that was on the station, because they were struggling. You know, and it all came from decisions from people who didn't live here. You know,
But in a way, you could be happy for, Dave and Rhonda, because you were able to make that jump and make that transition.
Yeah.
I mean, in radio,
at least you had a place to go.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big
That
deal.
was-
That's a big deal versus, I'm sorry, your career's done. And I've been expecting that since 97, that it would be the last gig. And, God willing, it hasn't been. There's always been something happening. On the other hand, I've always had to go, well, I can't play George Strait records, but I'm going to do news. Well, okay, let's do that. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
As I tell young kids, I go, there's 9 feet of water, jump in and start swimming.
Yeah.
Celebrate that. The worst thing that can happen is you make a mistake, you fail upward, make notes, improve your game, keep going. That's all you can do. At least that's how I look at it.
On that note, how about we close with Rhonda's motto? Do you want to share your motto that you shared with us? I didn't know if you had it memorized, so I thought I'd hand it to you.
No, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. No, I came up with this, because it's just a personal motto for me. Always be your best. And of course, me with entrepreneurial mindset. Anyway, so I took it as an acronym. Okay, so my first one was biblical, and like I said, not in a preachy sense, but just apply it, practice it, just be a quality person, exceptional, always go above and beyond, always be excellent, anything you do. Savvy, to be up with the times, whether it be technology or whatever it is, just be current, because I've tried to do that, not just live in the past, but, what's in the here and now, what's to come. And then the last one, but for me, the most important, be teachable. Learn from other people like Chuck, you and Mandee. I mean, you guys have been an inspiration to me too.
Oh, that's kind.
So it's one of those things, just learning from people and listening to their stories, and just celebrating them for who they are, and also taking away lessons on how you can apply things like that to your own life.
This has been another episode of The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
Podcasting.
gear,
And the gearheads that use the gear.
and making money with a hot mic.
And other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.
And so that was an episode of The Unknown Morning Show. Thank you so much for listening. As I share that with you guys, that's another project that I'm a part of with my mentor, Chuck McKinley, my good friend. And I'm so glad he had an opportunity to hear Rhonda's story. I just think she's so powerful. So if you want to check out The Unknown Morning Show, you can follow that where you get your podcasts, of course, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, all the places. You can find it there. And I just want to say thank you again for plugging in and listening to Celebrating Women. The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Email us a voice message to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story or the story of an incredible woman you know. Become part of the conversation on social media. Facebook.com/Celebrating Women Podcast. On Instagram, search Celebrating Women Podcast. The Celebrating Women Podcast has been presented by Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com. Support the show for as little as $3 per month at celebratingwomenpodcast.buzzsprout.com or visit our show notes. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women podcast.